Landlord screwed with the wrong tenant for too long. This will be decently long as it needs some context. I'm going to throw in a lot of stuff to make it all easier to understand as well. I'll put a **** where the story proper starts, in case anyone wants to skip the preamble. Minor details might not be entirely accurate as I've no interest in a revival of this conflict on any level. I won completely, and any resurrection can only taint the experience. We'll start off by noting that I spent about 2 decades working in security. During that time I worked many different types of security, in many different locations. The one that matters for this story was time spent in the rental housing tribunal in a major city, as a kind of bailiff. For those not knowing what that is, think a courtroom, in a major city anyway. In a smaller town it'll probably be an event room in a hotel or community center, as you'd see on TV but with less formality, and an adjudicator instead of a judge. They functionally are the same thing to landlords and tenants, but they definitely aren't the same thing. This place exclusively deals with landlord and tenant disputes, and is the only place to resolve landlord and tenant disputes. Note that I wasn't a bailiff, and it wasn't a court, but these terms mostly accurately describe the situation, and my place in it. For 2 years I worked at the rental housing tribunal. It was early in my time in security. I was 18-20-ish. Being as it was a major city, the sheer number of cases I sat through was beyond my ability to count. I saw everything there was to see. Noon is capable of surprising me with a story because I've seen them all in detail, as a side duty of mine was to ensure all parties had copies of all evidence being presented. I did a lot of photocopying, and always inspected everything I copied to ensure nothing got cut off or made illegible. By the time I stopped working there I probably knew the way everything worked well enough to be an adjudicator myself. Well, no, obviously not, but I'm certainly in no need of a lawyer either should I ever have need to go there. I also had intimate knowledge of how the system worked beyond the actual rules. Like, for example, adjudicators would always give a little leeway to anyone representing themselves over someone who had a lawyer, or how pissed off adjudicators would get when a party was speaking out of turn. Seriously, do not do that. *****. Skip forward almost a decade. I left the city and am in a fairly large town, in the same province, same tenant laws. I have a few roommates in a decently sized townhouse. We get along well, but there's a problem. Only I can write checks, and our paydays don't line up, so I'm the one who pays the rent. And I usually can't do it on the first because roommates don't usually all pay in time. We advise the landlord we might be a day or 2 late but will always have it by the 3rd at the latest. They have no problem with it at all. I spoke to them myself. For about a year this works fine. No complaints from landlord because even if we are often a day or 2 late, we always pay. We are also fairly quiet and don't damage the property. Nearly model tenants. I do not actually have any idea why, but one day this changed. I suspect a different person in the company started overseeing the region. One day, suddenly we got a summons to the rental housing tribunal, hereafter to be referred to as a HT, on the 2nd of the month for failure to pay rent. This doesn't actually lead to a case because we paid the same day, but now we have to pay the application fee the landlord paid in order to serve the summons. I bitched to the neighbor who was also the superintendent, and eventually heard back that their contact at the company was now demanding 1st of the month, no exceptions. Well, that really didn't work for us, so we probably had to pay that fee 15-20 times over the next 2 years. I could have gone to tribunal over it, but we were technically without a leg to stand on and I knew it. Maybe if I went enough times I can ding them for harassment, but I don't have time for that and my roommates don't care. After being split between us all the fee wasn't enough deterrent to change our behavior, so we accepted it. If this was the only issue, there wouldn't be much story though. At around the same time, the rent leeway vanished, so did mandatory maintenance. I'm not going to list everything that went wrong and wasn't fixed. You'll get a decent idea at the end. We suffered through it. We were all working too many hours, at shit pay to be able to actually do anything about it. We adapted, but after about 2 years, it broke everyone but me up, and moved out for various reasons within a 4-month period. I'm not going into any details on my roommates at all because things kinda exploded for a couple different reasons outside of this. No reason to dig any of that up. I had been saving up a while, and was able to quit my job without having to immediately get another, so I suddenly had a lot of time. I didn't want to stay and pay the rent by myself, or have to find new roommates I could live with. And with my experience in the RHT I knew I had the landlord by the balls, so I went for them. I stopped paying rent. Annoyingly I didn't get a summons the 1st month, but I did the 2nd, so I went, with a meticulously documented plethora of evidence of failure, to maintain the property and entering the property without formal notice. I had a copy for the landlord and a copy for the adjudicator. I know from experience that technically you are supposed to give the other party the evidence before the tribunal, but I also knew about the leeway an adjudicator gives to those who represent themselves. So I didn't give the landlord the evidence until our case came up. 100% total ambush. They argued they were ambushed, but the adjudicator just dismissed the case, dressed me down a little, and told me to file my own summons as I should have done. This was the petty revenge. The landlord and lawyer drove 3 hours to get there, for nothing. Worse than nothing. I filed my own summons, and the big day shows up. It's been about 4 months of me not paying rent at this point. I'm prepared to if I lose, but I don't think I'm going to lose. The whole thing could not have gone better. I had 20-30 pages of evidence and 20-odd photographs. They had nothing. They had no actual defense for our water heater being out for 6 months or us not having a fridge for a year, just to mention 2 severe issues. Their entire defense rested on us being late for rent, which actually worked against them once. That led to the adjudicator learning how many times we'd paid the application fee, and lies that had no evidence to support them. They even talked over me a few times, and I saw in his eyes the one time I opened my mouth to protest during their turn to speak but forced myself to shut up with every gram of willpower I had, so only a squeak came out. The adjudicator respected me. He had no respect for the landlord. I had one on every possible front. The only question was how much. It was more than I'd ever seen. I got 9 months of free rent, and the landlord was ordered to have everything fixed before the next month was over or I'd get more. I gave notice I was leaving at the end of the 8th month, and left at the end of the 9th. Because the landlord had never renewed the lease, I didn't have to give him the 3-month notice the lease specified. If you want a figure to put to it, I basically got a $13,000 judgment in my favor, adjusted for inflation and rounded. I also made the landlord and lawyer drive 3 hours, twice, only to lose. The landlord's face was so red at the end I thought he'd have a heart attack. He didn't though. By Mark. Edit. To clarify a few things based on questions. I also want to add, for those good landlords out there, I do feel you. My time in the RHT was eye-opening. For every bad landlord, there are 10 bad tenants easily. There's a massive debate of debates to have over the whole thing. I'll only say that I do sympathize with the good landlords out there. I'm not trying to paint all landlords as terrible. This is the only landlord I've ever had that was so useless. Edit. I've revised my estimate of the ratio based on a little research, and some comments from 30 tenants per landlord to 10. I'm probably still wrong, but the sheer number disparity between landlords and tenants effectively requires there be more bad tenants than bad landlords, simply because there are so many more tenants than landlords. I'm going to leave it at that, and just beg you not to rip me apart from either side. I'm intimately aware of the problems both good landlords and good tenants face, and my sympathy goes out to both sides.
AITA forgoing no contact with my family because my brother mocked my profession. I, 27M, have a very strained relationship with my family. Especially with my father and brother. Mostly because they think my job is too girly. I am a makeup artist. Before anyone asks, no, I am not gay. I am not trans. I just like the art of makeup and have always drawn towards it. Ever since I was a teenager I wanted to be a makeup artist or do something on that line. My father and brother always mocked me for it. Aside from the homophobic comments, they would tease me and bully me. One time my brother broke my MAC cosmetic kit when I was 17. I bought that with little money I had saved up from working odd jobs. My dad, instead of replacing it, started praising my brother. Moreover, he replaced my makeup kit with cheaper low-quality ones by saying it's all the same thing. I moved out at 18 and only contacted them on holidays and birthdays. I knew if I had regular contact with them they would mock my career. They already do it when I visit them and it is unbearable. That brings us to today. Few days ago I visited home because it was my dad's birthday. Also, my girlfriend has been insisting on meeting my family. I also wanted my girlfriend to meet my family because we are getting pretty serious. And as usual they started teasing me because of my job. Their comments were homophobic and transphobic, combined with a bunch of sexist insults. My last straw came when my brother said that I should start another job because painting faces will not get me anywhere. He compared me to his best friend who sells meth and said, selling drugs is more dignified than what you do. I told him to shut up. Unlike him, I am not mooching off my father. He has the audacity to question my job when he hasn't worked for 2 years and too lazy to even look for one. My brother took things too far and tried to punch me, but I blocked it. If it wasn't for my dad and girlfriend, they would have to call the police. After the incident, I blocked both of them. My dad demanded an apology. I just told him to fuck off and never expect another visit from me. My girlfriend was upset with me because she thought it was unnecessary for me to insult my brother. I just want to know if I did something wrong because people around me are saying I should have brushed it off.